All right, the name of this panel is The Future of Venture Capitalism, Investments, and Philanthropy into Black Founders in the Age of Assaults on DEI. I want to bring out our esteemed panel. I'm going to stand back up myself, actually. All right, first up, we want to bring out Melissa Bradley. Melissa Bradley is the co-founder of venture-backed Eureka, a tech platform where small businesses gain unprecedented access to expertise needed to grow their business. She's also the founder of 1863 Ventures. Big round of applause. Mylan Dennerstein is the litigation partner at the New York office of Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher. Mylan is also co-chair of the Public Policy Practice Group and a member of the Crisis Management Trials, White-Collar Defense and Investigations, Financial Institutions, Labor and Employment, Securities Litigation. Wow, so this is quite a title. And Appellate Practice Groups. Big round of applause. Kara James, the president and CEO of Grant Makers in Health. Prior to joining GIH, she served as director of the Office of Minority Health at the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, where she provided leadership, vision, and direction to advance the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and CMS goals related to reducing disparities and achieving health equity for vulnerable populations. One more round of applause. And Erica Seth Davies is the CEO of Rhea Ventures, which aims to transform the U.S. market for sexual, reproductive, and maternal health into a vibrant and equitable one through its impact investing, ecosystem building, corporate engagement, and narrative change work. One bigger round of applause. I'm a big guy. Ladies, thank you for joining us. We got to get started. We're already 2 minutes in right now. Melissa, I'm going to start off with you. Right now, we're looking at a situation where a lot of founders are facing issues getting funding. Just give us a general picture of the landscape right now.
So I think it's important to note that what's happening now for Black founders is not new, right? This is a long arc of, I would say, historical racism and marginalization around preventing Black founders and their communities from creating wealth. So right now, statistically, we know that Black founders spend at least $250,000 more to start the same exact business as their white peers. We also know that Black businesses, despite the stats, actually last longer than the average 5 years. They last 8.5 years. However, the longevity does not correlate to access to capital. And so I think what you're seeing as the plight of Black founders is twofold. One, as Black people, resilient, focused, concerned about our community. I think what they're facing is a lot of fear, a lot of suspicion around what they can and cannot do, and I think just obviously general racism. I think the challenge that we have is that why this is happening is not just because of race. I think the fear piece is even bigger, because the recognition right now that this country has forfeited at least $300 billion just in the last 3 years because of their racism. And when you have a place like Citigroup that said $16 trillion has been cost because of racism, I think what that says is that Black founders are constantly facing a wind tunnel whereby this country has said, I would prefer to support racism than I would prefer to support my own economic well-being.
So Mylan, coming over to you, one of the issues for funders is just simply fear. Fear of regulation, fear of some type of backlash from potentially the government, but also just the perception out there that you're doing something that may, quote unquote, be illegal. If you're someone who's a founder, how do you work around that to get more funding?
That's a great point, and I think you can see why Melissa is my expert in all of my cases, because she has so much knowledge and experience. I think that the fear, I mean, you'd have to really not be in this country right now to not see the fear and the way our government is operating. And I think what's really critical is to know what's going on and to really know the law, which sounds like, but I didn't go to law school and laws are annoying. But that's why you find people like me who can help guide you to make sure you can continue to do what you're doing. If you're a philanthropic organization, to continue to focus on your mission and your goals. Because oftentimes, we've been advising, was it really like 2 years ago, we were here, three, when the Supreme Court eliminated affirmative action in higher education at this conference. And we know where the court is. I don't think there's a lot of debate about that. So if you can recognize that and you can think about, hey, this is what I want to do, how do I get there? My job is to help you do that, and that's what lawyers should do. So I think while there's fear and it's real, it can be overcome. and we can all continue to do what we do, but you know, a lot of lawyers might give very conservative advice, and I don't view myself as not giving. I give very strong advice, but I'm going to try to find a practical solution. And I think that's in part because of my background as a person of color who understands what's going on in our communities. So I also think you need that kind of perspective as well.
Kara, you say you're more focused on inclusive decision-making and also creating a framework to help investors just kind of navigate some of that. What does that mean?
So I think, first of all, so we at Grantmakers in Health, we work with foundations across the country. So I think there is a lot of fear in foundations who are also trying to figure out how to protect their grantees and protect themselves from potential risk. And when we think about inclusive decision making, it includes including the communities that are involved in the conversations. And so foundations are doing that in a couple of ways. Some of them can be simple advisory committees, and then some of them have actually set up committees that are making decisions about who's getting funding. And so that's some of the ways in which you're seeing more inclusive conversations. But I think that we also have foundations that are standing very firm in their focus on health equity, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion. But as you think about, like, how do they also minimize risk so that, as one foundation president said, we don't have any long-necked turkeys, because in that diversity, equity, and inclusion executive order, foundations were named as one of the groups who could be targets for potential litigation, and nobody really wants to stick their head up and be that person.
Carrie, you also say that the risk of backing down is bigger than the risk of going forward. What exactly does that mean? I mean, Erica, I'm sorry. I apologize, Carrie.
That's okay. We all look alike.
You do not. You're all beautiful in your own distinct ways. You're all beautiful. I'm not even letting that one ride.
I got you, Frank. I got you. You know.
Yeah.
Frank's a good guy.
You know. You know. Everybody here is beautiful in their own way. So to be clear.
And now I have to follow that. So, in that is the idea that this is going to create not just more harm, but this, I mean, how regressive this is. We actually know what's happening because we've seen this before. So this is a very old playbook in the United States of America, and so we know where this goes. And when I look out on the landscape of the work that we do at the intersections of racial equity, women's health, and capital, it is actually costing our economy on a regular basis billions of dollars not to address the inequities. There is a cost when everyone isn't fully participating, in our economic growth. And so there's a danger of actual harm, and then there's a continued danger of retraction, right? Like, we're in a moment of retrenchment, and we've seen what this looks like before, whether it was coming out of the Civil War and after the era of Reconstruction, what happened after the civil rights movement with mass incarceration, and where we are today. So we actually know what happens next. And so backing down is actually letting power know what power can do before they even come for you. And so for us, it was what's legal and what's our risk tolerance. And so as long as we stay on the other side of what is legal, and can have a conversation about risk tolerance, we're much more confident about moving our work forward and not backing down, and giving folks permission to continue to do these harmful things, like releasing all kinds of crazy executive orders. And like you said, we know where the courts are on all of this. And so kind of operating in a space of forward movement and progress, regardless of what's happening in the environment, because to do otherwise is going to be far more harmful.
All right, so it's one thing not to back down. Melissa, I'm going to come back over to you, but is this the time to be bold? You know, there are some times in life where it's time to put your head down. Is this the time to put your head down, or is this the time to be bold and push back?
This is the time that I think Black people need to call on their ancestors for strength, for wisdom, and for confidence. Black on black crime is real. So we know there are some people that are backing down. But I don't think that we can, right? I think that if we back down now, all that we have achieved is just lost. And I think particularly now, if people saw the movie Antebellum, which to me was the scariest thing, but I think we're living it now, if we back down now, then there will be no turning back, right? If you think about the bill that just happened, the current president is just literally annihilating every group of color. And as always, who's it gonna be on? The Black people. And I think that if, I was born here. You can send me anywhere, but this is where I was born. And I think that we have to, whether we love this country or hate this country, recognize that this is very much our fight, as long as our indigenous peoples fight, who clearly have no voice. And I think if we back down, I think our ancestors are going to be pissed as shit. And I think that there will be no coming back. But let me just say this, but I recognize what that means for us, right? As we sit here at the Global Economic Forum, see people who look fly. I didn't see the Louboutins. I didn't see the Rolexes. I didn't see the diamonds. I didn't see it all. That may mean that we have to sacrifice some shit. And I think that's the real question. I don't think, I mean, it could just be you bump me in the line. We ain't backing down, we bucking up. But right now, to Erica's point, the opportunity cost is greater. And I think black people have to look in the mirror and say, what am I willing to lose of my own for my people and our collective preservation?
So Mylene, coming back to you, what resources do people in the business community have to push back against some changes, whether it's regulation, literal laws, or just sentiment that's against black founders?
I think Melissa said it quite right. We have each other. And this is a time where I think we really need to be thoughtful and introspective and deliberate. You know, when you go to war, you're not going to fight every battle. That's not how you win. And we have to be strategic about how to get to the end game, which is winning. And like Melissa, I think we have no option. So there are a lot of resources. There are different groups who are like the Global Black Economic Forum. I have partnered with Alfonso David and my law firm to represent foundations who need advice, pro bono. So there are people out there who are willing to do this work to get you to your end game. But I also think we all have individual responsibilities. So I'm going to give an example, but Melissa is running a fund to invest in groups, minority businesses, and the Black partners at Gibson Dunn are contributing because we can do that, and we're doing it because we want to, and it's important, but we're not doing it through an organization. We're not doing it because we're going to get a tax exemption. We're doing it because we have to make sure that businesses survive, because like Melissa, I'm from this country. My great-great-grandmother was a slave. My great-great-grandfather was a slave in Virginia, North Carolina. Like, this is my home, and they suffered way too much for me to, I do like nice things. I'm not gonna lie, and I really like nice vacations. But we've just—
You gonna be all right.
True. So, but you know, way too much. We have to engage. And you talked about risk tolerance, and I think this is really important too, is oftentimes some of the groups that we've been involved with get sued for things that I would say are on their websites and aren't always necessary to accomplish their mission. So take it down and don't do that. Do the really great work you're doing. But sometimes you need somebody like me to tell you that, because, you know, we want people to be able, organizations to function, and we were talking about this behind stage. Being sued is not fun. It's a lot of burden on an organization, and so we want to avoid that and accomplish the mission if possible.
Melissa mentioned that this is nothing new, having issues getting funding. I actually talked to a lot of founders, and they say the time after George Floyd, that was kind of a reprieve, and now it's kind of back to where it was before. If you look at the jobs report today, you saw disparities in employment. Black unemployment rose quite significantly over the last year. You're really focused on health disparities. If this is going to be a long-term fight as a community, what health disparities should we be focused on?
We don't have enough time for all of those. I think, so one, the jobs report, we've had economic disparities for time immemorial. So that's not new. And I think one of the things when we think about this, we have been somewhat here before. So we've seen resurgence and we've seen advancement in health equity, and we've seen people pull back. I think about, you know, the time after the Affordable Care Act passed, and we had some progress in terms of getting people covered. But we also have seen people pull back on programs as they've been threatened about suits around, are these programs are trying to increase Black, minority, other groups in terms of doctors, lawyers, health policy folks, whatever. This is not necessarily something that is new, but this is definitely different. In terms of health disparities, we're in New Orleans. Louisiana has one of the worst maternal mortality rates, and it also has one of the worst infant mortality rates. That is something that we also have an issue, and I'm going back to Nadine's comments about the data. We have lost the CDC division that tracks pregnancy risk assessments monitoring system. That's gone. We don't have data in other spaces. We're also looking at the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. That is the one that tells us about our adolescents' mental and behavioral health needs. We still have a mental health crisis. We still have a substance use crisis in this country. Those are not going away, and not having the data just makes us blind. If you have a leak in your house, you don't close the door and just hope the leak goes away. That's going to get worse, but that's what we're doing in so many places. But those are just a couple of them, and then with the bill that passed, we are going to see significant people who are uninsured, which means they're going to delay getting their care. It's going to be more costly when they get it. It's going to be less likely to be curable, and they are going to have worse health outcomes, and unfortunately, people are going to die. That's what we're looking at as we move forward.
Wow, a very sobering message. Yeah. Erica, coming over to you, you're saying we can't back down. It's one thing not to back down, but are there areas that we can proceed, or are there areas that, I don't know if it's under the radar is the right term, but areas where we can make progress that maybe aren't in the spotlight right now or at the attention of people that don't want you to have access to funding or don't want you to connect with the funders?
Sure. So it's going to require creativity, I think, but we're good at that, right? Like Black folks are resilient and we are creative, we're innovative. And I frequently say in a space where everyone is excited about innovation around venture capital, that your next best innovation actually is equity, because we've done everything. We've extracted and exploited so much that there is only sort of growth and opportunity is the next thing that we can do for innovation. And so getting more creative about some of the ways that we use the existing instruments that are out here, using donor-advised funds a little bit more frequently so that we can actually use philanthropic capital to resource for-profit enterprises. Looking at catalytic capital, everything doesn't have to be market rate return. You can actually just say, you know what's enough before observing an investment or deciding who to fund or how to deploy capital. So we're thinking about this much more creatively, encouraging others to do the same, as you shared, right? Like just making direct investments at this point. So folks are going to have to skill up on some things so that we are collectively and individually moving those resources much more intentionally than maybe we've had to for the last few years, especially since George Floyd, because there was a lot of money moving. Those of us who've been doing this for a while knew that window was going to close. And so everybody was like, okay, we'll do what we can, but we know that this is not going to last because of that history that I mentioned before of retrenchment. And so again, what are the creative things that we can do to build? Because once the destruction has been laid, we actually do have to put something in its place. And so to me, that's the forward movement, is thinking about what comes next. And just for us, when I was talking about understanding our risk tolerance previously, we started playing out scenarios, right? So that we knew, do not want to be sued, but what happens if we are? Right? Do not want to be doxxed, but what happens that we can protect our team and protect reputation to the degree that we can. So even in that, so that we could confidently continue to move our work forward and maintain the words racial equity in our mission, that's the work that we had to do on the front end to protect the organization, protect the people, and quite frankly, protect that mission, because it is crucial for us, particularly in the space of women's health.
All right, I think you're really leading me into my last question, but we have 5 minutes left. I'm not taking anybody's mic, but we got to kind of stay on time. Melissa, I'm going to come back over to you. What resources, if people are looking for resources to secure funding, to connect with funders in the back half of this year, what would you suggest?
So I think I'm going to deviate a little bit from that question, and I would say not just founders, but the Black community. If you think about, I think we just lost the last survivor of Tulsa. And I think that while we all have the privilege right now to walk around and do what we want, I think we need to start acting as if those were the times and all we had was each other. And so when you say what should we should be investing in Black founders, we should be investing in Black funds, we should be investing in Black women-led organizations, we should be investing in Black health organizations, we should be investing in HBCUs. And what that doesn't mean that we don't still get to critique, but we can no longer critique without capitalization, because then we're doing ourselves a disservice. So I think there are lots of solutions. They start with self and your ability or inability to look in the mirror and say, have I done everything I can to preserve myself and my people? And if you have not done that, whether it's a $5 check, whether it's buying a ticket to the WNBA game, whether it's a $5,000 check to save a health organization, but I think we have to realize that no one is coming to save us. It is on us, and everybody in this room, whether you got $5, $5,000, or $5 million, needs to decide explicitly to invest in the Black community now.
You said it's no fun being sued. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. What can you do to mitigate your risk of litigation?
I think some people like it. No. To mitigate your risk, I think what you can do is, depending on the type of organization you are, is do a risk analysis and do scenario planning. Lots of organizations are doing that. It's crisis management. What is our most risky thing that we're doing, and what is our risk tolerance, and how will our funders react if we're sued? Which side are they going to be on? Do we get federal money? Because that's a whole different can of worms. What's our replacement for that federal money if it goes away? So I think you really need to be detail-oriented and thoughtful, as all of you are, as you're thinking about these issues. And the other thing I would say is there are really good resources just letting you know what's going on. I'm happy to share, but we have a free newsletter that does updates every other week on what are the changes in the law in this area. And I think that's really important, so you can, because knowledge just helps you understand where do you operate? What state matters? Is the state AG Republican or Democratic? Because they regulate lots of nonprofits. So it's very important to understand the legal landscape at this particular time. But I am confident that we will prevail, because there is no option.
You gave us a pretty sobering message about the situation of health. No, it was needed. I think we all needed to hear that. Very specifically, what health organizations, whether they're public or private, are most important for our community, and what are the ones that we need to invest in, protect, et cetera?
Okay, so I got like 30 seconds here. One thing I want to say is that we need a vision for our future.
Our health future, or just overall?
Overall, what is it that we are working towards? Because there's a lot of activity that's happening right now, but it's not well organized, and it's not sort of working in purpose of like our vision for the future. Where is our Project 2050? How do we organize? Because it also helps us play more strategic defense so that we know what to protect and what we need to build. We aren't going back, so what is our vision for the future and how we move forward? Particularly when we think about health, this bill is going to hurt our hospitals. There are going to be hospitals, community health centers that are going to be closing doors. So how do we make sure that people still have access to services? Attacks on the DEI, we've already talked about our health workforce. How are we training our future workforce, not just the doctors, the nurses, the long-term caregivers, and others that we have, as well as the mental health providers that we need, are some of the things that are really important. And we've heard earlier from Nadine, public health, public health, public health. So much of what happens in our health system is happening outside of the four walls of a hospital or a clinic, but if you don't have clean water, clean air, and clean communities, you can't be healthy. So these are things that we need to invest in a lot more. We have decimated our public health system, and we are going to see more challenges with our hospital, but we can make it better. Sorry.
Don't be sorry. All right, we have time for one last one. One of your areas of focus is impact investing. If people have, what is it, $5,000, $5 million, $5, whatever one it is, where can you invest to make a real impact right now?
You just keep asking. I can't name a specific organization, but what I can say is one of the things you can do right now, actually, and I alluded to it before with donor advised funds, is to actually start aggregating resources that way, so that you're setting it aside, and then you can actually be very strategic and intentional with the way that you decide to move those resources as well. And so there are folks that can help you to understand, how do I do this so it's not just to nonprofits, but thinking about other ways of being creative with capital. But that's something that I would actually suggest folks do. If you don't know what to do, put it somewhere where you're starting to aggregate it while you're doing the learning, and then you know how to activate it strategically.
All right. Big round of applause for this uniquely beautiful group of ladies that do not look alike in any way, shape, or form.
And such a handsome gentleman, yes.